local people, important issues. CBS 10 WILM's weekly focus on the Lower Cape Fear region. This is Byline Wilmington with your host, Don Ansell.
Welcome and good morning. Well, with the holidays upon us, the economy is even more center stage. And what happened to the nation's banking system is still one of the mysteries many of us are talking about. Today, we'll try to unravel this story with our guest. Frederick Rick Willits III is the third generation to lead Cooperative Bank, a regional banking giant, which was first chartered in 1898. And Rick was just elected as vice chair of the American Bankers Association as well. First of all, congratulations on that, Rick, and a very good morning to you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Don. It's good to be here.
Let's start off with what sounds like a very simple question, but I'm sure it has a very complicated answer. We're talking about the banking industry and the crisis that's ensued. What happened?
Well, I think it's a myriad of things. Obviously, people were being granted mortgages that they had no business being granted. Certainly, there was some fraud, and there was a downturn in the housing market, and it was sort of a perfect storm. But I think it largely started with people who took mortgages that they really had no business taking out.
Well, there's been a lot of finger pointing at Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, lack of regulation, lack of oversight, on and on. Where does the buck stop on that?
Well, I don't know that there's one single place that it stops. Right now, it looks like it's stopping at the taxpayers. We always seem
stops there,
to get it at the end of the day, but the Congress is certainly to blame for some of this. There are many in Congress who were strong proponents of affordable housing and a belief that it was everybody's God-given right to own their own home.
Is that a bad philosophy?
I think it is. Even the Bible says the poor will always be with us. We don't have to like it and we don't need to ignore them, but everybody can't afford a home.
When did you realize that there was trouble brewing at Cooperative or for Cooperative?
Well, I think
for the industry.
The Wilmington area was insulated for a long time. We were boomtown USA up until about 2 years ago. Then we had the sewer moratorium, which we all remember, which basically halted new construction in New Hanover County. During that time, many developers literally lost momentum in their subdivisions and weren't able to keep them moving. Then last spring, when the moratorium was lifted, things had begun to turn down locally as well, and in many cases, developers just never were able to get started again. So I think probably as the
you were very involved in financing many of those projects?
Absolutely. So I think probably last spring is when we first began to see it. It's been an evolving downward spiral since then. So,
did you know that it was going to go as deep as it's gone?
No, and I don't think anyone else did, and I don't know that anyone knows where it stops.
Most Americans thought that after our experience with the Great Depression, that our banking system was safe, so to speak. Not the case?
Well, I think safe is sort of a misnomer. Obviously, anyone with a deposit in an insured account is safe. It's backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. I had someone one time say, well, what if they go broke? I said, well, all that money you stuck under your mattress is worthless too. I mean, you've got to believe in something, but certainly the banking system is safe. There are stopgaps in place today to prevent the kind of upheaval that occurred during the Great Depression.
And talking about the Great Depression, I read that your grandfather actually took management helm of Cooperative Bank, which was Cooperative Building and Loan at the time, in 1933 during the height of the Depression. Growing up, did you hear stories about that time?
I absolutely did. And I think, too, that World War II generation, my parents' age, who grew up in the Depression, and their parents, I think that whole experience left an indelible image on them throughout their lives. It was only when us baby boomers arrived that the consume and spend philosophy began to take over. The Depression era, World War II era people were far more frugal, and I do see one good thing from all of this. We're all becoming more like our parents.
Are there really any similarities to the time of the Great Depression and now?
Well, I think if you look at some statistics, our unemployment rate is now something just above 6%, which is high by current standards. But during the Great Depression, it was in the 20s. So, and we don't have the bread lines and the soup lines and all that. So, we're certainly not there yet by any stretch.
How dangerous a time is it for small regional banks?
Well, I think it's a trying time for small regional banks because our sweet spot is local small businesses. Certainly in the Wilmington area, it's been local construction and development types because, frankly, I think Woody Hall at UNCW estimated that something like 18% of our local economy is directly tied to housing. So when housing hurts, local banks have to tighten up a bit. So it has been a challenge.
So what are the biggest challenges that you face?
Well, unsold inventory, vacant lots, developers who are running out of the ability to service their debt.
There's quite a bit of speculation, and you said we don't know how deep it's going to go. There's quite a bit of speculation that things will get worse before they get better. What does that mean for cooperative?
It means that we've got to continue to face these challenges.
Let's focus a moment on the financial bailout. A good thing?
It remains to be seen. It certainly has not had any noticeable effect that I can see. I did read on page 3 of the paper yesterday, Secretary Paulson proclaiming that the banking system was now safe or stabilized or something to that effect. He said those banks which represent a systemic effect on the overall system have been stabilized. Well, that systemic effect means the larger banks.
But hasn't Secretary Paulson and everybody in government constantly, Bernanke, telling us that everything is calm now, things are safe, we're on an even keel, and that hadn't been the case at all? Has he been? Do people believe him now? Do you believe him?
It's too early to say. I think he's done many of the right things. I think there's some things that have been done. I wouldn't have done them the way they were done. It's essentially been run by a bunch of Goldman Sachs people that have been moved to Treasury with very little banker experience. And how do you bail out banks with no bankers around to help you with the system?
And talking about this bailout money, some of it's been used by banks to purchase other banks. Do you think that's an abuse of the intent of that money?
I have been in contact by virtue of my position with the American Bankers Association with a number of regulators and with a number of congressmen. And when we relate to the congressmen what the bailout money has been used for, they're furious. They said that was not the intent of it. But there have been some strong banks who've been encouraged to take the bailout money with an eye towards shoring them up so that they're in a position to take over weaker banks. How that equates into more credit availability, I'm not real sure.
Okay, we're going to come back and talk more with Rick Willits, who is CEO of Cooperative Bank. We're going to talk a little about bad mortgage paper when we come back. Stay with us.